Anya was stunned when she heard Quentin's urging. What's going on? Annie Lee was already coming over. Why did he still want her to change her clothes? Sir, Mr. Sunderby, since Annie Lee is here, you should let her wear this exquisite dress. After all, I am not a professional model. Anya timidly spoke her thoughts to Quentin through the fitting room. Anya, are you sure you want me to repeat what I just said? Quentin blinked his eyes with his gentle face, showed his authority was not to be questioned. Hurry up and change. It's getting late. But if my collection's exhibition is delayed, then you will take full responsibility. Quentin interrupted what Anya wanted to say bluntly. She pouted, feeling wronged. She was trying to argue with good intentions. How could she take the blame for delaying the exhibition? Anya helplessly looked at the beautiful dress in her hands. She began to change her clothes with a little excitement. As Anya changed her clothes, she thought, why is Mr. Sunderby's personality so straightforward? Now that Annie Lee admitted her mistake, he had not even given her an opportunity to make it right. In the future, she must talk less and do more work in the company. Lily, who was outside the fitting room, also did not expect Quentin to reject Annie Lee's request without thinking. She opened her mouth and wanted to persuade him, Mr. Sunderby, actually, Miss Annie Lee. But Lily did not finish speaking when the door of the fitting room suddenly opened. The moment she saw Anya walk out of the fitting room wearing the dress, Lily forgot what she wanted to say. Anya began walking over gracefully, wearing the gorgeous dress, as if she was in a dream. Not only did it exceptionally display the beautiful curves of her body, the neckline revealed Anya's exquisite collarbones, and the light blue color imprinted on the white dress contrasted perfectly with Anya's rosy face that appeared as smooth as flower petals. Her eyes were bright and lively. The garment had been designed with a unique cut. Together, Anya and the dress complemented each other perfectly and were indescribably beautiful. The only drawback was that the dress was designed for Annie Lee's almost 6-foot height. Anya's height was 5'8", making the skirt look a little too long. Quentin looked at Anya for a long time, then took a few pearl pins and scissors from the shelf and walked towards her. She did not know what Quentin wanted to do and subconsciously took a step back. Quentin grabbed her wrist and looked into her eyes. He then spat out 2 words, "Don't move." His warm hands worked all over her body, and Anya froze. She looked at Quentin's serious expression and nodded blankly. Quentin bent down and used a pearl pin to adjust the length of the dress. Then he took out a pair of scissors and cut a small hole in the skirt. Quentin grabbed the 2 sides of the small hole and used force to rip the skirt. Anya immediately closed her eyes in pain. This dress was perfect in every way. How could Mr. Sunderby bear to tear it so violently? Quentin crossed his arms over his chest and examined Anya from head to toe. Well, not bad. He had modified the dress and made it more compatible with Anya's height and temperament. It also added a sense of nobility. Open your eyes and see how it is now. Anya slowly opened her eyes. She looked at the dress from top to bottom and found it had become even more perfect. She was so excited that she did not know what to say. She just kept nodding her head. Yes, this is so very stunning. Anya's excited look made Quentin smile. It was a very happy thing to see someone else in the state of awe over something you had created. Even though he was aware that his own work was always breathtaking, every time he saw it from someone else's perspective, it brought him a new sense of self-reassurance. Quentin rubbed his chin with his right hand. The dress was perfect now, but there was still a flaw with its model. What exactly was missing? Quentin looked at Anya's face and suddenly found the problem. He frowned and asked, "Why didn't you put on makeup?" Anya blushed at Quentin's words. She stuttered and explained, I applied some powder and lipstick, then... Actually, what Anya really wanted to say to him was that she was a designer, not an internet celebrity. Why did she need to put on makeup? Cosmetic products cost money. She still needed to raise a child. Where would she find the time to buy so many expensive cosmetics? Of course, Anya only dared to say these words in her heart. Don't explain. Quentin waved his hand. He spoke to a man behind him abruptly. Jefferson, it's your turn. Yes, sir. Jefferson immediately came to Anya's side and grinned at her. Please, take a seat. Anya did what she was told, completely flustered. Immediately after, she saw Jefferson take out a large box and skillfully opened it. In the box were sponges, chalk, eyeshadow brushes, eyebrow brushes. A few minutes later, an Anya that Anya had never seen before appeared in the mirror. Her cheeks were red and delicate, her pink lips were shining with a seductive luster, and her long black hair had been perfectly coiled into a rolling classic style. He lazily rolled it on one side and inserted a vintage hairpin on the side to fix it. This style fit the dress perfectly. Quentin stood behind Anya and looked at her in the mirror. He smiled in satisfaction. Anya's face instantly turned red. Although she was already the mother of a 4-year-old child, she could only pretend that she was an adult in the moment. She felt so giddy inside. What woman did not have a girl's heart? Anya's young heart was currently pounding under Quentin's gaze. He saw that her face was red, so he gently smiled and said to her, Get up. I will take you to the exhibition site. Yes. She nodded and quickly stood up. She walked in front of him and lowered her head, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Quentin, who was about to leave, suddenly remembered something and turned his head. He said to Lily, Lily, bring my bag here. Yes, sir. Lily was very efficient. Very quickly, she brought the bag that he had always carried with him. Quentin searched the bag for a while, then took out a red cotton box. The box looked old, but it gave the people the impression that it was very expensive. He looked at the red cotton box and smiled. He held it to Anya and said, Here you go. This is... She hesitated and then took the box. Anya looked up at him. He nodded at her, indicating that she could open it. She then pursed her lips and carefully opened the red velvet box. However, when she saw what was inside, she could not help but cry out in surprise. What a beautiful pair of coral earrings! Yeah, Quentin nodded. The inspiration for the dress came from blue and white porcelain, which incorporated a lot of global elements. The overall use of color was cold tones. If Anya wore this red coral earring, it would add so much warmth to the aesthetic. Quentin hadn't thought about the needed contrast until he saw her. Art was the collision of beauty and passion, and when they came together, new beauty was born. "O sailor, come ashore. What have you brought for me? Red coral, white coral, coral from the sea. I did not dig it from the ground, nor pluck it from a tree. Feeble insects made it in the stormy sea." Anya fondly held the coral earring and muttered, "What? How did you know this poem about the coral earring?" Quentin was shocked. Then he looked at Anya with joy. He thought that Anya was already very talented in fashion design, but he did not expect that she also had a certain degree of understanding regarding jewelry. Anya finally shifted her gaze from the coral earring to Quentin. She smiled and said, "When I was in college, although I majored in fashion design, I double majored in jewelry design. Although I was not great at it, I remembered some things when I was studying jewelry history." "Very good." Quentin kept nodding his head. The gentle temperament of his body became more radiant. "Tell me more about it. How do you feel about this coral earring?" "It has many complicated patterns in the base shape, which seems to follow after the Western cultural rejuvenation. It took a long time for the style to rise to prominence. In general, this coral earring is a classic design, beautifully decorated." Anya carefully stroked the coral earring and said, "It's pretty much exactly as you have described." Quentin took a step forward and said to Anya, "This coral earring came from the 19th century, and it was made in Italy. When I was studying, I took the opportunity to travel around the world during summer vacation and found it in an antique shop in Italy." "Thank you, Mr. Sunderby, for letting me see something so precious," Anya sincerely said to Quentin. "And thank you for understanding it." Quentin looked at Anya and stretched out a hand to her. "Come, I will bring it for you." As soon as Quentin said this, the surrounding people who were watching the feed from the show suddenly gasped. Mr. Sunderby, who had only known Anya for a few hours, yet she was clearly special to him. Everyone knew that people like Mr. Sunderby, who looked gentle and refined, were actually the most picky. They also liked to keep people at an arm's length. They did not expect that he would actually take the initiative to share earrings with her. Anya was also shocked by Quentin's words. She hurriedly waved her hand and put the coral earrings away. Then she closed the box and handed it to Quentin. She said, "Mr. Sunderby, this pair of earrings is very valuable. You also value them. I cannot take them. I'm afraid I won't do them justice." Quentin's hands froze in the air for a second, and then calmly he put it down. He laughed at himself. He had probably not met anyone who could talk to him like this in so many years. He was so excited. He had only known her for a few hours. However, sometimes it felt very strange to meet new people. There were times when no matter how much time two people spent together, they would feel like they had barely been together at all. And yet, sometimes with a single sentence or a look, it was as if the two of them hated each other for being late, simply wishing they had known each other their whole lives. Quentin's gaze landed on Anya's somewhat uneasy face as he intuitively said to her, "Take it with you. I want my dress to be perfectly displayed in front of the public. And as for her model, your jewelry should always be the best." "This..." Anya looked at the red box hesitantly, then looked at Quentin's encouraging eyes. Finally, she nodded and put it in her earlobe. "Come with me. I will take you to the venue." Quentin looked at the perfect Anya and smiled faintly. "Yes." Anya nodded again. Under the envious gazes of everyone, she followed behind Quentin. Anya and Quentin did not speak. Although there was light music flowing in the car, Anya still felt nervous. After calming down, she suddenly felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Quentin had just returned from studying abroad. As the director of fashion design at Sunderby Styles, the outside world and the media were watching the fashion design exhibition that was being held for the first time and analyzing his debut. Thinking of this, Anya became even more uncertain. Her fingers began to stir uneasily. Quentin, who was driving, seemed to have noticed the change in Anya's mood. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror and said with a smile, "If you have stage fright, I won't force you." I... Anya stuttered and could not speak. Who had said in the fitting room that if the exhibition time was delayed, she would take full responsibility? Now he was acting so tolerant again. "Sir, are you joking? You are not forcing me? I am now at your behest. Do I dare to say that I am not going?" Anya continued to scold Quentin in her heart. "Quentin, You even tore it up in order to fit my body size. Where are you going to find a model? Besides, if I dare to say that I want to get out of the car now, then I don't dare to stay at Sunderby Styles anymore. Goodness, this Quentin looks gentle and refined, but I didn't expect him to be this way. Anya silently cursed. Since you aren't refuting, show that you are confident. Remember, the dress holds the meaning of the fairy light, beautiful and delicate. No matter who you are, if you wear it, it will be a beautiful day. Quentin looked at the passing vehicles and spoke in an unquestionable tone. I understand. Anya sighed heavily in her heart. Anyway, there was no turning back now. She would take it one step at a time. Anya lowered her head and waited. Very quickly, Quentin and Anya arrived at the most famous exhibition hall in Harborton. It was a springboard for designers and models to step onto the international stage. The fashion designers who held the press conference here were either famous or very talented people. In fact, Quentin's design had already made a name for itself in the world of fashion design. Now that he had returned to Harborton, it was only to open up a new market. Quentin looked at his watch. The time was just right. He raised the corner of his mouth and got out of the car to open the door for Anya. Let's go. Anya nodded and carefully got out of the car and followed. As soon as Quentin stepped into the hall, a gorgeous young woman in fashionable clothes, with her chin raised to the sky, stepped up in her high heels to welcome him. Oh my God, Quentin! There are only 10 minutes left before the exhibition. You have finally arrived. Thank God. After Lucy shouted exaggeratedly, her gaze landed on Anya, who was beside Quentin. Who is she? Why is she wearing a wedding dress? Where is Miss Lee?